Okay, so I have a video that I want to make. It's sort of along the lines of what Lambdog and I have been discussing, but or Southern Paladin, whatever you want to go by. But it's an aside. It's not really on topic. Something you said in your video made me think about the minimum wage. So, how much do you think the minimum wage should be? And a lot of people's answers to that is an amount of money that is not really a livable wage wherever you're saying it. Like, even if it's, $15 an hour in California or some shit like that, that's how much is fucking rent in California? Yeah, for anything. And I don't mean to rent like a shithole one bedroom apartment in the worst area possible. I mean like your average 2 or 3 bedroom apartment anywhere in Los Angeles. How much does that fucking cost? So I'll put it to you that the amount that we pay people, whether it's $15 an hour or whatever the fuck it is in California, or around here the minimum wage is still $7.25, but everybody is paying people $12 an hour for minimum wage jobs, or even a little more than that, because it's almost impossible to get anyone to even apply for the job at 7.25, because that's how the economy is right now. And this somewhat proves that you don't need a minimum wage, which is probably true, but at the same time you'll have places like I used to work for AMC Theaters when I was in late high school, early college, and it was the sort of place where they paid you minimum wage, and once every 6 months to a year, I forget what it was, they would review you for a raise, and that raise that you were getting was potentially a nickel for having worked there and done a good job for them for a year. And I'm not saying that they should pay you $20 an hour more for that, but like, if you have a good employee that you like, as opposed to, some random hire off the street that you're gambling on, you should at least give him a raise that equates to something at the end of it, whether it's 50 cents or $1, something in that range. Like, and maybe after a few years of that, you cut back on that because you don't want to have an employee that you're paying 3 times what you're paying the new hire or something like that. I get that, but a nickel every year is kind of ridiculous. So my question is, well, what should these people be paid? And my definition of this is, well, they should be paid a livable wage that someone who is working, I think any man that is working, or even a subhuman animal like a woman, should be paid enough money to where they can afford an apartment, at least, if not a house. They should be able to afford a cheap car. They should be able to afford to not only get like enough food to sustain them or whatever for that period of time, but even go out to eat and shit if they want, and have money left over for savings or whatever it is that they want to do in life. You're literally working a full-time job, like 40 to 60 hours a week, whatever it is. It's ridiculous that there are companies that are allowed to take that much of someone's time and not give them enough money to have kind of these basic necessities, as I see it. And you could say, well, that's not how things have always been. Well, we used to have fucking slavery, too. We used to have kids working in coal mines, too. There's a certain point at which you're like, yeah, some of this shit is just wrong. And in my opinion, this isn't, Ma and Pa Kettle who run a bakery taking advantage of somebody to keep their bakery in business, although there is some of that. This is giant mega corporations that make shit tons of money, like AMC, for example. Their average weekend take at the place that I worked was about $500,000. I think they can afford to pay people a livable wage. And if they can't afford to pay their employees a livable wage, then maybe they shouldn't be in business. Maybe we should find some other way that we watch movies. And the same goes for fucking McDonald's. The same goes for Walmart and whatever. And a lot of people will be like, well, those jobs just aren't worth that much. You don't provide that much value. bullshit. Like, you're giving up that amount of time of your life in exchange for being able to, you know, get the things that you want. And if you can't even pay the rent and grocery bill on what you're getting paid for your 40 plus hour a week job, you know, how are you supposed to better yourself and pay for school or any of that shit and get out of that position? Well, this is why the government has student loans. That's bullshit. Like, yes, that shit is available, but that shouldn't be the only way that someone can get out of that position. If you work a full-time job, you should be able to afford to pay for some community college or even a real college. And, like, don't even get me started on how much colleges cost now. You know, I've seen college in my lifetime go from something relatively affordable to where if you're going to a, you know, Ivy League college, it's just astronomically expensive. If you're going to a state college, it's more affordable, but it's still, you know, a mountain of debt that your college degree may or may not provide enough money to actually pay for. And this is where you have half the country screaming for free college tuition, because every job out there requires you to have a college degree. Not every job, but any job that people would want to have pretty much has this as a requirement. And it's kind of a stupid requirement. Like, I don't know. There's many jobs out there that are not so fucking technical or whatever that you have to have a mechanical engineering degree to do the fucking job. They're wanting, you know, you have to have a BA in history or a BS in fucking business or something like that to even apply for the job, because we want to see that you can complete a task. But some of that's bullshit. Like, there are smart, capable people out there without college degrees, and if you want to make the argument that, well, then those people should be paid less, I think kind of everyone should be paid the same for the most part. You know, there's some things that are going to be paid more than others, but when it comes to cog in a wheel type of things in an office environment, that, you know, how is that any fucking different than the guy that works at Walmart? If anything, the guy that works at Walmart provides more service in my life for me than the cog in the machine in the office of, you know, AMC corporate or whoever the fuck it is. Not to keep picking on AMC, but they're worthy of picking on. They sling popcorn for $17 a bag. So they're my example for this, and they're the one I have the most experience with. And some of this sounds a little communisty, but I think, like, there's a basic level of income that every person, no matter their level of education, intelligence, or skills, should have the right to be able to achieve with the sweat of their own brow or whatever. And beyond that, if you want to go to medical school or something like that, I don't know, maybe be good enough at your job that I'm willing to actually pay for your services. Don't be one of these doctors that's shit at their job and, well, the insurance is paying for it anyway, so I can't complain that much. And, like, there's a whole bunch of that in, like, the medical profession and the law profession, where there are these shysters that have a degree that think they can charge out the ass for their services, and they aren't even good at their job. I had a doctor that, I had a fucking ear infection that just wouldn't go away, and instead of trying a different antibiotic, they sent me down this rabbit hole of people looking for fucking cancer and other problems and shit. And I had this shit going on for over a year, and finally got with a doctor that I knew and convinced them to, hey, what other antibiotics could we try? Could we try anything else? Like, this has been going on for a year and I'm in extreme agony. The only thing that makes my life bearable is antibiotics, which they won't give me anymore because they say I must have cancer. And they gave me some different form of antibiotic, and that shit was gone within 2 weeks and never came back. Okay? And this is just my experience in the medical field. I'm sure worse than that happens every fucking day. So why are those people paid so much? You know, at this point, given the nature of our system and shit and how fucked up it's gotten, fuck socialized medicine. See if I give a fuck. You know, I think a doctor should be paid what the dude flipping fucking burgers at McDonald's gets, because that's about how good he is at his damn job. And if you wanted to get rid of insurance and get rid of a bunch of other shit and just skip to the chase of this is what you owe, and either you can pay that or we have a payment plan that is available to you and you owe it. Like, it's not something that you can get out of and we sell the debt to a debt collection company and whatever. No, like, you owe it and you're not allowed to buy or sell a home or some shit until you fucking pay it off. You'd have to have some sort of way to enforce that, but we could do better than our current system. Our current system is such that if you don't have health insurance, you're not going to have health care, and health insurance is expensive. And I don't know, it's a whole different video, but it's kind of the same ball of wax in that, why don't we design a system that's actually good at what it's supposed to do? And if socialized medicine is the only answer left to us because Obamacare so fucked the healthcare industry, which it did, then fuck, let's do that. I don't give a fuck anymore. You've made it to where I no longer care about having the same healthcare as the UK or Canada because you fucked up American healthcare so much. And when it comes to, you know, the minimum wage people or whatever, how are you supposed to be able to afford all of this other shit without your employer providing it to you? Which most of them do now because they're being forced to. I don't really think that shit's right either. And like, the real shit part of the whole thing is, some of the insurance that you pay out the ass for doesn't cover everything. You know, if you got cancer tomorrow, it would probably pay for most of that treatment. But let's say, I don't know, you got a large infection and went to an emergency room and had it treated or something like that. Oh, well, we don't cover that because you went to this emergency room instead of that emergency room, and in network and out of network, and you have to fill out all these forms, and then at the end of the day, you still owe $4,000 because we're not going to pay for it. And to the people who say that doesn't happen, that 100% happens. And I guess my question at the end of the day is, why don't we pay people enough money to actually live for doing the amount of work that we have all decided is a full-time job? You know, there's a lot of people who are like, I work 86 hours a week. And I'm like, yeah, and what is your home life like? Like, there should be some work-life balance to everyone, regardless of where they are in the economic scale. You know, people have a right to happiness and a life. And it shouldn't take you working 86 hours a week to be able to have a kid or two and have an apartment big enough for you and your wife and kid. And yet, does your wife probably work at this point too? Yeah, and that's reasonable and whatever. But at the same time, that wasn't the way it was for however many thousands of years. You know, the woman took care of the house and the kids, and the man went to work and whatever. And like, maybe this is my inner conservative side that is just like, man, we should make things the way they used to be, and, you know, women should be house slaves. But I think a man's salary should pay enough money to where his wife wouldn't necessarily need to have a job, or at least not a full-time job, where she can still be with the kids and take them to school and that sort of shit. What kind of society do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a society where half of society is deemed losers because they don't make 6 figures a year and therefore can't even afford, you know, any free time, any, you know, basic things that people want, whether it's some widget like a phone or some cool knife that they want or whatever? And I think you're better off as a society and an economy when more people have money. When you have money concentrated in the hands of a very few people, do they start businesses and do shit? Maybe. Some of them do. But this is like the idea of trickle down economics, which I would to some extent agree with, but on some other levels, I'm like, really, when you spread money around to everybody, everybody spends money and the economy as a whole is healthier. And I'm not saying you should make everyone a millionaire or whatever, but how much money does it actually take to raise a family in the United States in whatever place it is that you are? Well, maybe that's what the minimum wage should be. What about retarded Jimmy and his, retarded wife and their retarded kids? Like, should they be punished because they will never be smart enough to be a Wall Street investment banker? Are we trying to reward the most savage and predatory amongst us, who are the smartest amongst us, who will go out and like hunt after that job that is at the top of that game, and that's who we want to reward in society? Or do we want to reward everyone who is a hardworking individual that contributes something to society, whether it's flipping burgers and working at Walmart, or whether it's the investment banker and the doctor? Now, should the investment banker and the doctor make more money? If they provide more value, then sure. But like, some of them legitimately do not. There are tons of those people that are bad at their jobs. And I think part of making this lower end a higher paying thing for everyone would also be making the upper end of it extremely competitive, where you get paid what you're worth. If you're a neurosurgeon that can save 10 people's lives a day by performing brain surgery, and you get 9 out of 10 of those people fixed every single time, no matter what, that's a very high skilled, high paid person. If you are retarded Jimmy who managed to pass medical school in the Cayman Islands or some shit like that, or fucking Grenada, and all you can do is wellness checks on kids and like prescribe antibiotics until you think someone has cancer, and then send them on a year-long quest in pain to figure out what their ear cancer is when they don't have ear cancer, then maybe you should get paid the same as the burger flipper, because you add about as much value. Is that guy still providing a service? Yeah, but he's doing the same shit as like a nurse practitioner. He's sorting out shit for another person who's more specialized and better at their job to actually treat someday. So we'd have to fix both ends of it, and freeing up some cash at the upper end of it by paying some of these investment people and doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs and whatever actually what they are worth, instead of paying them such an exorbitant amount of money that they can afford a Mercedes and a BMW for their wife and 2 houses or 3 houses on the beach in Malibu or some shit like that. Like, some of it is literally ridiculous. And the part that pisses me off the most is the amount politicians get paid and or can make off of opportunities they have while in office. That's why I mentioned Indian chiefs amongst those who should have their pay docked. Like, when I say that, I'm talking about politicians. Maybe I'm just a commie at heart or some shit like that, but I don't think this sounds like communism to me. It sounds like common fucking sense. That everyone should be paid at a certain level, because what they are doing in a 40-hour-a-week job at any point in the system is providing a large value to our economy. And those who are contributing more should get paid more, but that contribution should be judged in reality. And when all you do is sit in an office and decide where the money goes, how valuable of a thing is that really? Is that any more value added than the burger flipper? Maybe to society at large, but not to the individual. Like, to me personally, I want the burger flipper to cook the burger good. I would like the investment banker to not tank the economy, but look at the situation we're in. All of the people that run all of the shit like that are asleep at the wheel at best, and at worst are actively doing things to enrich themselves and hurt the greater population. And when it comes to the super mega rich or whatever, I don't really have anything against them, but most of them didn't make the money for themselves. Or if you look at how they did make the money, it's questionable at best. You know, take Trump, for example. I would have been a billionaire no matter what, but it's a good thing my daddy gave me $20 million at the start of it, because I wouldn't have been in anywhere near as good of a position to do that. And that's one of the good examples. Like, there are bad examples of people that their dad was one of these like Wall Street thieves that milked a bunch of people out of their savings accounts and then fled to the Cayman Islands and slowly funnels money to his children illegally. Like, you can look into Dan Bilzerian for yourself. He's a poker player who supposedly made all of his money playing poker and has a bunch of like photos on Instagram of him partying with models on yachts and shooting guns and whatever. And in reality, he probably made some money playing poker, but his dad was literally one of these like Ponzi scheme people who fled the country with a bunch of money and set up trust funds for his kids. So I guess my view of most of the super rich is that they should have to work like everybody else. And then what's the carrot at the end of the chase for everyone to keep working? I don't know. Having a good society that can sustain itself in the long term against Russia and China. Being in a world that allows everyone to succeed. Being in a world that rewards hard work despite whatever it's, working at. And if there is a job that just doesn't provide enough value to justify being someone's full-time thing or whatever, okay, we can make different rules for that, and maybe it's a part-time job, or it just shouldn't exist in the first place. We're getting to a point now where between automation and outsourcing and a bunch of other shit, if you can't compete, you can't compete, and that job will go away and there'll be different jobs. And does that eventually lead to, some state where there are no jobs and people have to have universal basic income? I would think not. There's always going to have to be something done somewhere. But some of the easy stuff we could do to create more good paying jobs in this country would be to actually be a functional country again. Be into manufacturing and making things instead of trying to go the way of Europe, where everyone sits on their investments and milks the system for money. I have a very negative view of this culture that we breed, where everybody's goal is to have enough money to never do anything ever again, first off, and second off, enough money to where they can set up their kids to do that. It's not really right. Like, empty hands are the devil's playground or whatever. And should there be some people that are free enough to never do anything? Well, maybe. Like, maybe you could make that argument that that's how you get, like, the Nikola Teslas of the world or Elon Musk. But for every Elon Musk, there's a Paris Hilton. In fact, I would argue for every Elon Musk, there's probably about 500 Paris Hiltons. And we have a society that values, in my opinion, low value shit, such as acting or celebrity and fame and endorsing products and shit like that, advertising, rather than hard value and hard work. And it shows. You know, when you listen to celebrities talk about various topics, some of it comes off where they're saying shit like I am, where the world should just be a better place. But some of it is, well, this person obviously doesn't live in reality. And that's why they vote Democrat. Because while saying, all of this stuff, they're also saying that we should let everyone into the country and it should be a free-for-all and we should be a socialist paradise. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we could do better than what we're doing now. And I don't know exactly what that looks like. But a good start to it would be paying people a livable wage at the bottom level. And in my opinion, a livable wage isn't enough to buy a BMW and have 3 houses. It's being able to afford a decent apartment big enough for your family on one salary. Because what if you have a wife that's disabled or some shit like that? And this is where, well, then she should be on disability for the government. Or we could just have a system where people make enough money to take care of their disabled relatives. Does that solve everything? No. And maybe there should be some basic social net for people that fall into this area of, I am, a vegetable in a wheelchair and semi-retarded and I have no family to take care of me and I'm going to die on my own. Like, that's not good either. I'm not saying that, but we could eliminate a lot of shit by just paying people enough money to actually take care of the shit they need to take care of in their life. And I think it's a better system where the young people that are actually working are the adults and leaders of their families and take care of their elderly parents and whatever, and it's not the elderly parent making $20 billion a year off their investments in the stock market that keeps their children afloat because that's the only option left to them. Like, I know a whole bunch of people that have parents that inherited various things or whatever and have investments in the stock market. And whenever emergencies or expenses come up, they always go to their parents. And I don't blame them for this. This is kind of the system that we live in, where we have decided that the balance of power and money should be in the hands of the extremely elderly, instead of the man in the arena, so to speak. It should be in the elder class. I don't know, maybe that is the right way to be in some ways because they made it to the end and they're the elders and whatever, but at the same time, when you look at hunter-gatherer societies, that's not how it's like. In hunter-gatherer societies, there's a passing of the baton when dad gets to be 50 or 60 years old and can't do some of the things that he could do when he was 30 to his sons that are in their 20s and 30s. And now they are the leaders of the tribe because they are the ones who are actually going out there and hunting and making the fucking world go round. I think it's a better way to be. And it goes all the way into our politics and shit. Like, why do we keep electing 80-year-old men to be president? And why is Nancy Pelosi one of the most powerful people in Congress? I'm sorry, at the point in age that you are 80 years old, you shouldn't be in charge of dick. You should be sitting back and enjoying the efforts of your children and or your investments if you want to go that route. Whatever it is, you shouldn't be, the person at the top of the pyramid controlling the whole thing when you're shitting yourself and forgetting who you are. And maybe this is because I experienced some of this in my own life with my grandparents, and I see how non-functional they are. I see how they are in no position to be making some of these financial and life decisions not just for themselves, but for their entire family. And I question that. And as much as like the Paris Hiltons of the world are a problem, I think it's more of a problem that 90% of all the spending power in America or whatever is concentrated into these funds and retirements and various things, that the extreme elderly are the people that the politicians care about what they think, because they're the ones with all the money. Well, they worked for a whole lifetime to get that, and in some cases, and if you're still with it enough to do shit, then I don't really have anything against you. But that's not the average person. Like, most people aren't, what, like Bill Maher is really old and is all anti against people who are ageist. Like, I've heard him talk about that several times, and I kind of get that to some extent. But to another extent, I also know my great grandfather, who, when he was like 75, went for a drive around the block, got lost, drove across town, and parked until they found him. And then when they tried to take his car away, walked down the block to a used car lot, bought a used car, drove it 5 hours north and got lost again, crashed into a stop sign and a lady in a car. And when the judge took his license away, he told the judge he was going to rip off her head and shit down her neck. And then shortly after that, while they were at the zoo, he pulled down his pants and took a piss in the middle of the zoo. Why did he do this? Because he was fucking getting up there in age and had Alzheimer's and shouldn't have been in charge of anything. And I put it to you that the person running our country right now, Joe Biden, is in the same scenario that my great-grandfather was in, where, literally he's 3 shakes away from telling a judge that he's going to rip off her head and shit down her neck, and going and taking a piss on a giraffe. And we could balance out a shitload of this by simply paying some people at the bottom more. Once they have enough money to be able to afford the basic necessities of life, they might be more inclined to contribute to a political party or a campaign, and therefore maybe some of the politicians would actually give a fuck what they think. Because as I guess I'm a millennial, but no politician gives a fuck what I think. Never have, never will. Not until I'm so old that it doesn't matter anyway. We have some big problems in our country that, in my opinion, should be addressed. Like, do some of them need to be addressed? Does this particular one with the minimum wage need to be addressed? No, probably not. It'll kind of address itself. Would we be better off as a society if we did? Would be my question. And to that, I'm going to say yes. I think some of what we do in this country to justify paying poor people less money because they're stupid and have no skills at being a fucking lawyer, doctor, Indian chief investment banker is kind of ridiculous. When those same lawyers, doctors, Indian chiefs, and investment bankers go out to eat and bitch to all high heaven if their burger's not flipped right. Every time I go through McDonald's, the food is shit and the service is shit, and I can't believe a Filet-O-Fish sandwich costs $11.99 now, and would some prices need to go up? Maybe, but maybe that needs to happen. Our country lives off of fast food and has all sorts of problems as a result of it. So it's kind of where I'm like, yeah, it's okay if the price of fast food goes up. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a communist. What do you guys think? Like, do you have an opinion on the minimum wage? If so, tell me below. But like, I'm very much of the opinion that we should change this to some level. Should we make the national minimum wage $30 an hour or something like that? I don't know. I don't know at what point it needs to be livable everywhere. And this is where the minimum wage really shouldn't be a federal thing. It should be each state doing it one at a time, and this should be a state issue. And if the states that want to pay more people more money attract more people to them, then good. You know, everyone will have choices. Right now, we live in a system where you're relying upon companies to be with it enough to go, well, even though the minimum wage in Tulsa is $7.25, in order to pay people enough to where they show up for work, we have to do $12 an hour, or 12 to 15. That's about what it is around here. And when I say minimum wage jobs, I'm talking about, like, there's a burger joint down the street from me called Brahms, and they regularly advertise that they're paying people $12 an hour. And there's, like, the movie theater that I used to work at is doing about the same amount of money. Little Caesars Pizza pays people $14 or $15 an hour now. And to say that, we couldn't pay people a livable wage is kind of laughable when, hell, 10 years ago, those amounts were what I'm talking about, very livable wages. But it's gotten to the point where inflation has gotten so bad that we finally got those levels of pay, but now it's not enough money to do all the shit that it could have done 10 years ago. And that's the danger with doing some of this, is you'd have to make sure that the price of goods doesn't keep increasing, and this is where hard currency would come into play. None of this shit works on its own. You have to make your system to be a system and for it to work together. And you can't just keep devaluing the currency to the point that you always have to increase the minimum wage every 5 years, because if you don't, you'll have people living in poverty who work full-time jobs, which is the situation you would be in now. If you were getting paid $7.25 an hour in Oklahoma, at least, you would be below the poverty line working a full-time job. And I think that's unacceptable as a society. So tell me what you guys think, and leave me a comment. I'll see you later.